Ladies and gentlemen, we're back with another episode with somebody who is an incredible inspirational voice for animals, who has worked with animals nearly his whole life, since the time he was just a wee little guy, I guess. And we have Dr. Michael W. Fox. He's written some books. He's done more than I can mention in the time that we have. Welcome, Dr. Fox.
Thank you. Good to join you. And I love the questions that you sent to me, which make me feel that we're both on the same page with a lot of very critical issues.
I believe that to be true as well. And I'll tell everybody out there that I originally contacted Doc Fox to talk about pet food and the type of, basically I was scared that veterinary offices were being bought up by people like Purina and stuff like that. And I just don't trust that conflict of interest. And so I got in touch with somebody who happened to be Doc Fox, who knows all about this stuff and has been dealing with it since before I was born. So, and the fight's not over.
No, it continues in many ways. One of the big concerns about the manufactured pet foods today going to dogs and cats is that, number one, containing what is called 4D meat. And that is animal parts in the slaughterhouse that is considered diseased, dead, dying, or debilitated. And it's condemned for human consumption. Hundreds of thousands of tons recycled, rendered, and put into pet foods. Then we have the corn and the soy and the wheat going into a lot of pet foods. The residues from the corn especially, in the dry kibble, can have a fungal mold called aflatoxin, which causes multiple health problems, destroying the liver and possibly causing cancer. And that often results in recall of the dry kibble for cats and dogs. And then we have residues of glyphosate, which is Monsanto's herbicide, because the corn and the soybean are genetically engineered to be resistant to these herbicides. And so the residues are in the food that we're feeding to our animal companions, and we wonder why cancer is going up and up, and inflammatory bowel disease problems and so on, because herbicides disrupt the delicate balance of the essential bacteria in our guts and in the guts of our animal companions. And I've just been communicating with one feline specialist in Colorado, because I wrote a critical letter to the American Veterinary Medical Association where a bunch of veterinarians were saying that a high percentage of carbohydrate in cat diets is fine. And I'm saying no, as with dogs, it's obesogenic, it's diabetogenic, and it can cause inflammatory bowel conditions. But this essentially results in a lot of money being made for veterinarians treating these conditions and then putting the poor animals on very expensive prescription diets, most of which are completely unpalatable. Hill's Science Diet, for example, and in fact, one of the authors of this article saying that high carbohydrates for cats are fine is associated with Hill's Science Diet Company. And the author, one of the authors, this is the book that can you see that clearly?
Yeah, a little higher up and then a little bit back. There you go. Not fit for a dog. Yeah.
And the two authors, the co-authors, Elizabeth Hodgkins, DVM, she was the chief veterinary scientist with Hill's Science Diet. And her cat became diabetic on the dry kibble that she was feeding. And it was a wake-up call for her. And Marion Smart, DVM, PhD, she's emeritus now professor of veterinary nutrition at University of Saskatchewan Veterinary School. And they came together and helped me put this book together. which is a complete blast of the pet food industry. It is a racket, essentially recycling stuff and making money from byproducts from industrial agriculture.
Yeah, show it one more time. Show it one more time right over your face.
Yeah, that should not be going into.
Yeah, there you go, people. Pick up that book.
And Richard Alport, you can read a veterinarian from England, Richard Alport, his endorsement. So it's getting around.
Good.
And the latest book on this, a wonderful expose, is called Big Kibble.
Oh, cool. Great.
And it's a whole expose of the racket. It's essentially pet food mafioso.
Yep.
And the veterinarians have been brainwashed. They believe, because they're told that these diets are scientifically formulated, that they're okay. But it's not whole foods. It's all byproducts and condemned parts that are being recycled very profitably. And the pet food industry gives a lot of money to the veterinary schools, and until recently, the only courses that the students had in companion animal nutrition was provided by veterinarians employed by the pet food industry. So you know which way that went. But let's not talk about human doctors who basically know bugger all about nutrition and supplements and whole foods.
Right.
Look at the obesity epidemic that we have going on. And half of that is dysbiosis.
Yes.
Imbalance of the gut bacteria, the microbiome. And a lot of people now, and dogs and cats too, are benefiting from having infusions or oral capsules of fecal material containing the bacteria from healthy animals. So there we're going.
Yeah, what does that tell you? So I'll just say for everybody out there, it's very similar to the way that Coca-Cola puts its unhealthy products in every restaurant and they put their logo on everything and try to make a big deal. Pet food companies are also taking their garbage products and putting them in veterinary offices and ramming them down our throats, telling us that they're just fine, but it's the same thing. We're obesity, diabetes,
arthritis, cancer.
Yep.
And a lot of these poor animals with inflammatory bowel conditions, they're subjected to intestinal biopsies, where the veterinarian will anesthetize the animal and take a little sample of the intestines to find out, for cats especially, if it's lymphatic cancer or an inflammatory bowel condition, rather than saying, take the cat off the kibble and put it on a 90% good meat diet, even if it's canned like Fancy Feast or some of the manufactured cat foods are better than the dry kibble.
Yeah.
But they spray the kibble with what's called animal digest, which is God knows what. And they've done a lot of science on making this kibble very addictive to the animals. But we have a test here. We have a family of raccoons who come onto our deck in the evening, and I put various foods out. And the last thing they eat is the cheap kibble that I put out for them.
Wow.
Now, there is progress. Let me just show you one sample here, which is really good. Can you see this?
Wisdom
dog food. This is produced by a colleague friend of mine, Dr. Bob Goldstein, a veterinarian that I've known for years. And it's all humanely certified ingredients from free-range chickens, fruits, vegetables, and it's not high heat processed. So the nutrients are retained. It's a very slow, drying, desiccating process. Kind of like the space food that we give to our astronauts who are going up into space. And we shouldn't be going up into space. We should start taking care of Mother Earth. But that's another story.
Right.
And you might see the logo in the bottom on the bottom corner here, this is certified humane. And several companies now are linking with this company. Let's see my notes. Linking with this company called Animal Welfare Certified GAP, Global Animal Partnership, certifiedgap.org, Global Animal Partnership, to make certain that the animal ingredients are not horrible byproducts, that the farmed animals have been raised humanely, ideally free range, and ideally organically certified. And again, coming on the horizon now, for us and for animal companions, but I say not for cats. Cats are obligate carnivores. They have to have their meat. But dogs are like us, they're more like omnivores. And there's a shift now to this fellow Paul Shapiro took my place at the humane side of the U.S. for farm animal issues. And he's set up a company cultivating meat from cells. So we now have cultured fish, cultured chicken, cultured beef, and there's no animal suffering. I do have questions about cost.
Yeah.
I think it's a lower carbon footprint, that some of the nutrients needed to stimulate these cells to grow is kind of bioreactors. It might be the wave of the future. But we as omnivores, and our dogs too, can get a lot of our nutrients from other sources. But they are now talking also about including insects, various nutritious grubs, in dog, cat, and human foods. And the European Union has approved a couple of species. I think one is called the Spanish blackfly. I might be corrected. The larvae as a food additive, high in protein and high in nutritious fats. And we used to eat grubs in the old days. You go to Australia and the Aborigines, the witchery grub, they'll relish, they'll roast it and eat it like candy. So the insects can help save us, but also the microorganisms for these fermentation processes. And fermented foods, in one of my essays on pet foods, fermented foods are very good for animals too.
Really?
Yeah, a little sauerkraut, a little fermented kefir, kombucha, but kefir is good, little fermented, because they have the live probiotic bacteria in there that's good for the guts, and that's good for the immune system. Yeah. And there's a gut-brain connection. You know, you feel things in your guts. And some of the bacteria in our guts produce serotonin, which makes us feel good.
Interesting.
So a lot of the depression associated with obesity in humans is probably because these bacteria are deficient in their digestive systems. And that's why they benefit from fecal infusions. And
you did say that glyphosate actually does kill the microbiome in your stomach.
Yes.
So
I suspected that 20 years ago and pushed for research, and the research has confirmed it now. And for the harvesting of wheat, for example, in order to get it to wilt quickly and dry quickly, they give it a final spray with glyphosate just to kill it off. It's a crime against nature. It's a crime against humanity.
This is why I have a glass full of gin right now. This is the world.
I prefer tequila.
Awesome.
Tequila Mockingbird.
Oh, that sounds really nice too, yeah.
I'm your mockingbird, mocking at the sanity of everything.
Yeah. I mean, you can't love animals and still truly love humans because of the world we live in.
Well, I think we're animals too, but we haven't learned how to live properly. We've become a planetary infestation. And one of your questions was, do people lack the empathy to not become vegetarians or vegans?
Why is that?
And my response to that is culture. tradition, habit, and not being informed. But once people are informed about how these animals are treated, what they're being fed, the antibiotic additives leading to resistant strains of bacteria, the ractopamine, which is a beta agonist that's given to pigs, especially in America, that makes them incredibly tense all the time, but eat more and put on more muscle. I was interviewed by a Chinese newspaper on this, and they said, well, we're not going to import pork from America that's been treated with ractopamine. But then they had the swine flu outbreak. To control swine flu, they were burying thousands of pigs alive in pits in China. And this is the problem with these factory farms. We've lost hundreds of thousands of turkeys and chickens in America to control avian influenza, which is now affecting wild birds and even affecting dolphins and marine mammals. Avian influenza. And how they kill the birds, they just switch off the ventilation and they suffocate and overheat. So once you start learning about what's going on these factory farms and the incredible pollution and the fact that so much good grasslands that sequesters carbon is being plowed up to raise corn and soybean to feed these animals. The waste is incredible. We should convert this land back to producing good food crops for people first, feed people first instead of the farm animals, and get away from the meat habit. And there's definite correlation with people developing breast, colon, and prostate cancer with high beef consumption. So if that's the way you want to blow it, but you're blowing the planet as well.
Yeah.
So wake up, baby boy, and go nuts and eat nuts.
Yeah, I mean, let it be said that meat is a protein source, but let's say it doesn't have any fiber. And so if you just want to pile your colon full of anaerobic meat piles, then yeah, you might experience, but beans, I eat beans like they're going out of style.
Yeah.
They have fiber, they have all kinds of good stuff, and they're delicious, and I can do anything I want to. I can form them into balls, I can make patties, I can make a stew.
But remember, you always have to soak them first to get rid of the lectins, the glutens, the gliadins, and everything else. And that's one of the problems with people switching to grain-free pea and lentil dog foods.
Oh, okay.
Linked with cardiomyopathy and enlarged heart disease in dogs. That the lentils, the pulses as they're called, haven't been processed properly. You have to soak them overnight and rinse them well to get rid of these harmful chemicals, which the seeds have to protect themselves from insects.
But if you do this and you go and you get yourself some high quality, well-processed legumes or something, can you feed them to dogs? And
yes, it should be fine. Absolutely, yes.
A lot of people don't know that the dogs are omnivores and that they have this possibility to be vegan. I mean, what's stopping that information?
Well, I think part of it is the proper balance and formulation. They do need to have some essential fatty acids, the omega-3 fatty acids. A lot of dogs have skin problems because, especially in the dry kibble, the fats become oxidized. So they put ethoxyquin and rosemary extract in to stop the oxidization, which are not very safe additives, to put it politely. And so it's good to add a little olive oil, a little flaxseed oil, or fish oil. I buy Nordic Naturals cod liver oil for our dog and just put a few drops in. I think for our animals, we do need to provide some animal products in their diets and not go completely vegan yet.
Right.
Never for cats, but take it carefully for dogs. There is now, from the same company with Dr. Bob, the no-hide dog raw chew has a little bit of egg in it. But it's a rawhide chew for dogs that is not made of hide.
Now, what's the problem with hide as far as?
Well, again, it's an animal product. And a lot of the hides, especially coming from godforsaken countries like India, where my wife and I worked, my wife ran an animal refuge there for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
It's a whole other story of animal suffering.
Yeah, I can imagine, yeah.
The cows are sacred in their religion, so they will not euthanize them when they're no longer productive, so they put them in cow shelters and sell the manure, and then sell the bones and the hides. And the hides are processed and often treated with quite harmful chemicals that become residuum in the hide. So make sure if you're buying rawhide chews for your dogs that they're manufactured and processed in the US where less chemicals are used, but avoid the imported. And there's some theory that the mad cow disease that hit England several years ago came from human remains mixed in with the bone meal from the funeral pyres in India, but that's a whole other horrible conspiracy theory that has some scientific validity. Because the prion disease is very nasty. One dog in Sweden did succumb to prion disease. And is ravaging the deer here in Minnesota and several states. It's a different variant of prion.
Yeah.
And it causes Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease in humans, which turns our brains into Swiss cheese.
Oh, my God. And you know, we've had this information from the very beginning that the uncleanliness of meat markets and meat processing plants and stuff, and it's already disgusting from the very beginning, to where meat goes bad so much faster than vegetables, and it is so much more poisonous and bad for you when you get bad meat versus eat a bad cucumber or something. We should have known from the very beginning that if we can find an alternative, we should, or at least make sure that it's high quality meat.
But I've often said, if you want to eat animals, you kill them yourself.
Yeah. And I respect that.
And go to the slaughterhouse. I visited slaughterhouses everywhere. Seen the ritual slaughter of Jewish and Islamic ritual slaughter where they cut the throats.
Yeah.
It is quite grotesque.
Yeah.
And I feel so sorry for the slaughterhouse workers, the stress on them. And there's more depression and in-home violence. We need to stop the mass killing of hundreds of millions of animals for human consumption and wasting land to feed them. It is one of the major contributors to climate change and converging on One Health. I worked in animal rights and then moving from animal rights to realizing that it's a One Health issue.
Yeah, this is a great concept.
Public health ties in with animal health, ties in with environmental health. And the big wake-up call is the coronavirus pandemic that we're facing today. That certainly came from an original animal source, possibly the wet market, but possibly because it has gain in function. It was an escape from a virus vaccine developing laboratory in Wuhan. Because during the
Trump,
during the prior administration, the research was shifted from the U.S. in coronaviruses to Wuhan, China, because of the risk concerns about biosafety. So let's back away from the animals. The animals are telling us, back away, because you're going to have more of these emerging diseases coming.
Yeah. And
they're called zoonotic diseases.
Zoonotic diseases. Now, they are most famous for coming from meat markets because of what we choose to do. Is that right?
Yes, especially bacterial-resistant Salmonella and E. coli, and strep and staph, and avian influenza and swine influenza, the flu epidemics waving across. They come from the pigs and from the birds. So, wake up, humanity. If we're keeping animals under conditions that you just can't imagine, of overcrowding, confinement, which are petri dishes for these kinds of viruses to spread and evolve and become more harmful. We have to stop it.
This is why I contacted you, because I think there are few that see the big picture about this.
Yeah.
And the rest, if they could see the picture clearly and it wasn't obfuscated by corporate media or something like that, we would all make the right choice. But we're going to...
I put this out in two of my latest books. Can you see the cover of that?
This says Healing Animals and the Vision of One Health. Yeah.
Healing Animals and the Vision of One Health. And on the cover is the photograph of a vulture dying. It's dying from eating the carcass of a cow that was treated with diclofenac.
Lift it up a bit. Lift it up a bit more. Yeah. There you go.
To control fever, diclofenac. And so they would eat the carcasses of the cattle in the dumps, which my wife videotaped. And hundreds of thousands of vultures across India were dying from this drug. So Healing Animals and the Vision of One Health. And the other one, when the boat is sinking, we say women and children first. Now the earth is sinking, so I'm saying animals, animals, nature first. We have to change our paradigm. And it gets back into the biblical framework. Do we have God-given dominion? And the original meaning of the word dominion comes from the Hebrew verb yorad, which means to come down to take care of. It's a call for compassionate stewardship. And every major world religion embraces the golden rule, which is to treat others as we would have them treat us. And we need to extend that even to the microbes in the soil upon which our health depends. It's quite simple. Extend the golden rule, and then we might evolve. We anointed ourselves with the name Homo sapiens, which means man the wise. I say it's Homo ludicrous. At this stage, we've got to wake up. And the climate crisis and the COVID pandemic are two wake-up calls to move towards a concept of one health and embracing the golden rule. That we've morally inverted the golden rule, as per Donald Trump, that those who have the gold rule. And we've got to flip that around.
Yeah. And that was one of my questions as well about corporations and their underhanded methods. And they're basically at the root of all this, where we've already gone through this, like in the 60s, the counterculture, and we almost had love and peace and understanding. And but I think it was squashed by these ever-present corporate and authoritarian forces in the world.
Well, it was David Corton, I think, back in the 1970s, wrote the book, when corporations rule, just anticipating where we're at now, where multinational corporations control the markets. Remember, it was Henry Kissinger who said, if you want to control the people, you control the food. but now...
I hate that guy. Bastard.
But the corporations have their lobbyists, and they pay the politicians. They give them money to get reelected, and this keeps the wheel spinning and spinning for the status quo. Years ago, I was part of a caucus group meeting in Congress, talking about then what we called the greenhouse effect, which today is known as climate change. And we gave all the warnings about what would happen, which is happening now. And the Chamber of Commerce essentially kicked us out, saying, this is going to disrupt the economy. We must maintain the status quo. So the concept of one health is one earth, one economy. And it's the economy of nature with everything recycling. And the dance begins. But right now we're in Kali Yuga, the great phase of destruction. The Hopi Indians call it Koyaanisqatsi. This is Hopi. Koyaanisqatsi, life out of balance. And we must move toward Lomakatsi, living in balance. And considering the carbon footprint of what we're feeding ourselves, our families, our companion animals, is related to the earth health and our own personal health. And that's where we can start tying things together so beautifully. It's all there. We just need to wake up.
And I really am, you're one of my new heroes that I didn't think that there were any human beings left that could inspire me like Dr. Fox. This is the philosophy I've been looking for. And I didn't know that I'm already 30 years too late jumping on it, because it's been around for a while. People have been fighting for animal rights. And I love the concept of One Health, that it's all related, because it is. I wanted to ask you a little bit about, you made an appearance on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
I was on several times.
Yeah. I
was even interviewed by the Muppets. It's a very funny one there where Kermit the Frog and I you should clip it.
I'll run it after the show. I'll put it at the end. Yeah.
It's a very funny little clip where I'm interviewed by the Muppets.
Well,
and they call me they dubbed me an absent-minded professor and a Peter Pan. Which I don't know whether is a compliment or an insult, because I always regard myself as an iconoclast. I've always questioned authority and sought science and ethics. And one of my favorite books, published by the University of New York Press.
Hold it up. Oh, yeah. A little higher?
Bringing Life to Ethics.
Okay, Bringing Life to Ethics.
Global Bioethics for a Humane Society. And that's essentially where I put my deeper thoughts in a philosophical framework, moving toward embracing the golden rule, One Health, and so forth. And one of the endorsers is Frederick Kirschenmann, an organic farmer, Thomas Berry. I loved him. Author of the great work, Our Way to the Future, and some very good people. So there are many like mine, but...
You have some indigenous people on the front of that book. Do you find a lot of inspiration for philosophy from indigenous cultures, or more simpler?
Absolutely. The indigenous people who live close to nature, the Haudenosaunee, the rule of 7 generations of the Iroquois Federation, that before we do anything, we think 7 generations ahead. It's called consequentialist ethics. And also think 7 generations back. And that's the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois Confederation. And they had equal rights for women, too, before the whites invaded America.
Unbelievable.
Yes. And there was great wisdom with a lot of indigenous peoples. And I'm quoting Black Elk and others, and the great people in my writings all the time. Yeah. Black Elk said, "We must learn to live in harmony with the power of the world as it lives and moves and does its work. And that we are all part of the seamless web of life, which we must not destroy."
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Bringing Life to Ethics, people. Check that out. And, well, we did 35 minutes. Do you want to come back and do it again in a few weeks?
Yes. I would welcome you, and you're a great spirit, and I take my hat off to you.
And as I to you, my good sir.
Okay, take care and be well.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Here's Michael. He's getting ready to play his flute for the dogs. Yep, that's the doggy symphony of India.